Science TV 111. Osei Kufuor, I'm back at y'all again. A lot of people are inboxing me pertaining to the different breed of aliens. Do we have different breeds of aliens? Is the question. Well, yes, we do. I was going to wait until the UFO conference, but I'll give up some because this is not my knowledge to hold. You get what I'm saying? So, when you study the Chinese and the Japanese, you are studying two different breeds of extraterrestrials. And this is why they don't like each other. China and Japan is two different planets, two different time zones, two different dimensions. When you are studying time and space, you are studying two different, distinct, alienated geographical areas. And whenever there are two different alienated geographical areas, the function of the brain of these citizens or these aliens that reside within these geographical areas are different. The DNA is different. You get what I'm saying? But because we are on a third dimensional realm, this causes us to appear to be alike as far as humans and mankind. When in all actuality, if you was to look through a different lens, meaning that the satellites that is in space, if these satellites were taken down, we would be able to see each other through a different lens. The satellites is touching our brain, which is causing us to see each other as human beings and mankind. This is how they tricked us. As so-called black people, as melanated beings, we are really green aliens. We are really green people. If you put it under a certain microscope, you will see that our skin is really green. And we have a much larger mammalian part of our brain that is functioning with the equator, which is something that gives us a different slide every time there is a paradigm shift. When I say slide, I'm talking about a different capacity of brain functioning. We have different cells in our body. Cells are, it's not just something that is just sitting in our body moving around. These are entities that communicate with one another. And what happens is they are USB cords or USB systems that takes in information from other celestial bodies that downloads into our system, which sends signals into our brain. So the most dominant extraterrestrials on this third dimension is the melanated species. Why do I say that? Because when you study our DNA is very cordial. It is very dominant. It is more potent. It has no cut to it. Anything that has a cut to it is genetically modified. It is a processed being. And anything with processed information or processed DNA has a processed state of mind, meaning that they come from that dominant species. Now, in other words, and however, when you study these alienated species, such as the Chinese and the Japanese, these people were created by a higher form of entities that has this dominant DNA, which comes from Mars, being Africa, which is a planet. Most continents are planets. Most countries are planets. You see, the European had to lie to you to keep you looking up for planets when all of your planets and moons are here. Everything that you see in the sky is a hologram. They are using satellites that is in space to project something that is here in you and inside of the earth into the sky, which is a hologram. Moons don't exist in the sky. Moons only exist inside of extraterrestrials, or they exist here in the inner earth. We live in the inner earth, but we live in the surface of the inner earth. But we do have giants that we call Africans that live in the inner earth that had to proceed to the inner earth because certain hydrogen particles and certain oxygen particles started to disappear 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. And so they have organs in their body that were shut down at that time, and so they had to proceed into the inner earth. But now these giants that are African is now waking up to come back to the top of the earth because the organs in their body is waking up. And the organs in their body is similar to the lions that you find in Africa. And this is where they get Your verse in the Bible that the lion is asleep in Judah because the organs that those Africans in the earth have, which are giants, has a lion organ that is asleep in Judah. Now, we're going to go further with this. When you are studying DNA, you have to look at it from a standpoint of how thoughts travel within the DNA. Because energy is thoughts. And within the circumference of energy, or within the jurisdiction or body of energy, there's information that lays dormant within that energy that travels within that DNA to help you to be able to function at a certain capacity. And as so-called Africans, we function at a certain capacity that allows us to unconsciously communicate with other worlds that exist in this parallel universe that is crossing this universe, which is actually helping us to be able to come in contact with other parallel realities. Now, that I will go much further into at the UFO conference. All right. So, with that much said, this is Osei Kufuor, Black Science TV 111. Also, I am initiating a school where I am providing homeschool materials to teach these types of things, because this is something we need to know. Because as Black people, as so-called Black people, we entertain ourselves in more sports. We entertain ourselves in more hip-hop, but there's not enough scientists in the jurisdiction of the so-called Black community. And this is where they are keeping us asleep. Because he who knows science knows himself. Nature is the highest form of science. You are science. So if you're not studying science, then you don't know who you are. Because you are so busy entertaining something that is not a part of your history, meaning your DNA. History has nothing to do with slavery. History is independent. It starts with you. Your DNA holds your history. Within your DNA, you have something that's been traveling with you from world to world, from dimension to dimension, from life to life, which is your own history. The history that we are admiring today is history that somebody else wrote for us to admire. It's not your history. It's not your history. Okay? So let's wake up. Let's open our eyes. Let's fine tune into who we really are. Because we are not humans. The word human being is English. And if we agree that the European is a young race of people, then the language came with them. So you mean to tell me if you are a human being, you are only 6,000 years old? We are extraterrestrials. We've been dwelling on every planet since the beginning of time. Time don't exist anymore. We'll go further into that as well. We've been on every planet. We've been on Europe. We've been on Russia. We've been on Africa. We've been on the Caribbean. We've been on Hawaii. We've been on Honolulu. These things are new, but these are different dimensions and time zones. All right? So with that much said, this is Black Science TV 111, Osei Kufuor.